In the previous episode, after Klaus learned he had been betrayed by his own siblings, he vowed to take revenge. Meanwhile, Elijah, Rebecca, and Freya tried to take down Dahlia, but their plan failed when Klaus formed an alliance with her. Under the pale moonlight, Klaus massacred the werewolf camp. Facing a formidable foe, Vincent chose to confront him alone, instructing Haley and the werewolf elder Mary to take Hope and leave. After weighing her options, Haley quickly departed. However, neither Vincent nor the werewolves under his command were any match for Klaus. They were swiftly overpowered and knocked to the ground. Haley was preparing to leave with Hope, but she quickly changed her mind.
I'm not gonna teach my daughter that it's okay to leave the ones you love to die.
She handed Hope over to Mary and decided to return to help Vincent face their enemy. Marcel and Rebecca were caught in a web of indecision. Rebecca wanted to stop Dahlia, but she couldn't bear the thought of Marcel carrying the guilt of killing her with his own hands. Rebecca remembered how Esther once tried to destroy her vampire body, so she boldly speculated whether, if this body died, she might return to her original body. Rebecca initially believed this was her brother's twisted revenge plan, but she soon realized it was part of a greater scheme. Marcel is adamant that he won't take the risk. He can't accept losing Rebecca, but Rebecca said she trusted Klaus, because her brother would never kill her.
You really do care for me. The least I can do is save you from the awful act itself.
Rebecca grabbed a dagger and plunged it into her own throat. Meanwhile, Klaus's battle with the werewolf couple was nearing its end. Dahlia, having lost her patience, stepped out of the shadows. Haley, still determined to challenge Dahlia, was quickly subdued with a single move. She soon realized something was wrong. What Klaus had borrowed from Marcel was the spell he once used to bind the crescent werewolves. This meant that Haley and her entire pack would once again be turned into wolves, only able to return to human form on the night of a full moon. As Haley and Jackson howled in agony, they gradually transformed into wild wolves. Mary, who had fled, was not spared either. She soon sensed something was amiss in her body. She hastily stopped the car, opened the door, and transformed into a wolf with a painful howl. Under the watchful eyes of the coven, Davina stood before them with a torch in hand. She used a dagger to cut her palm and let her blood drip into the nearby flames. The harvest girl, Davina, had now transformed into the ruling leader of the witches. Hope, left alone in the car, was about to fall asleep, but her father quickly found her. However, Dahlia soon interrupted their moment of solitude. Camille quickly awoke from her unconsciousness. Not only did Klaus spare her life, but he also secretly revealed his plan to her. Stumbling, Camille made her way to Elijah. She raised a dagger and slashed across Elijah's chest, then reached into his body and pulled out the hooked blade. Elijah awoke with a look of terror on his face. Klaus was still stalling Dahlia. He declared that he would never allow his daughter to be handed over as a prize, especially since Dahlia carried a century-long slumber curse. He couldn't bear the thought of Hope becoming another Freya, so Klaus took the initiative to propose that Dahlia link with him first. With his original vampire power, Dahlia could easily attain immortality and would no longer need to sleep for a century. Meanwhile, Camille revealed Klaus's plan. Knowing exactly how to kill Dahlia, Dahlia began preparing for the linking ritual. Klaus asked Dahlia what her specific intentions were. She replied that she only needed a single drop of Hope's blood. As for Freya, who had lost her usefulness, Dahlia planned to kill her when the moon reached its peak. As the spell took effect, their blood crossed the salt line and merged together, sending a massive surge of energy through them. The spell worked, and Dahlia was ecstatic.
I will never need to sleep for a century again.
Oh, perhaps one more nap.
But just then, Klaus pulled out a dagger and plunged it into his chest. At the cost of sealing himself, Klaus forced Dahlia into slumber once more. Rebecca succeeded. She killed the host body and successfully returned to her own body. Marcel is so excited that he lifts Rebecca out of the coffin in a princess hug. They find a depressed Elijah, whose anger at Klaus has reached a fever pitch. Rebecca assured him that Hope was safe and that Freya was with her. Elijah quickly found Hope and also discovered the slumbering Klaus and Dahlia. Freya says she's not her aunt's favorite witch, but Dahlia's favorite witch is her sister Esther, who betrayed her. To obtain Esther's blood, they would first need to drag Esther out of hell. Davina was preparing to use her one and only chance to tap into the ancestors' power to resurrect Cole. Vincent warned her that while the Michelson family may be divided, they always unite against external threats. Unbeknownst to Davina, they are preparing to secretly replace Cole's ashes, allowing an unwitting Davina to resurrect their mother. Freya advocated for killing Klaus outright. Marcel was the first to object. He didn't want to die. The The group was caught in a dilemma. Rebecca noticed that the dagger in Klaus's chest was dissolving. They had to resurrect Esther before the dagger fully melted. The plan was set, and they split up. Rebecca and Elijah went to burn their mother's remains and retrieve the ashes. Marcel and Freya were tasked with finding the urn containing Cole's ashes, but while Marcel wasn't looking, Freya secretly used magic to locate the white oak stake. She found the white oak stake hidden in a secret compartment in the fireplace and then hid it away. Marcel also found the urn, but it was already empty. Davina had taken the ashes first. Davina was preparing to cast the spell when Rebecca appeared before her. The long-lost friends walked outside to catch up. Rebecca truthfully revealed the plan, but Davina refused without hesitation. She would not waste her one chance on the Michelson War. After all, the only person she cared about was Cole. The negotiation ended in failure. In her anger, Davina snapped Rebecca's neck. Freya tried everything she could, but nothing slowed the dagger's melting. Eerie vines rapidly climbed the railings, signaling that Dahlia's magic was awakening. Freya, no longer hesitating, pulled out the white oak stake. Marcel tried to intervene but was swiftly immobilized by Freya. At this point, Davina had already poured the ashes into the ritual circle before her and began chanting the spell. Flames roared to life, only to gradually extinguish as the incantation continued. Freya wept, knowing she was about to destroy the family she had longed for. A bare arm emerged from the ritual circle. Freya steeled herself to strike, but Klaus grabbed the white oak stake. Both Klaus and Dalia awoke, but it wasn't Cole who appeared before Davina. It was the long-dead witch, Esther. The final battle had begun. Dalia abducted Freya, forcing her to kneel before her. She drew a ritual circle on the ground, preparing to execute her traitorous niece. The original siblings arrived just in time, dragging their mother with them in handcuffs. The 1,000-year reunion of the two sisters was filled with complex emotions in their eyes. Dalia revealed the white oak stake. Klaus scoffed, saying it was impossible to take on 3 people with a single stake. But Dalia responded that they were still too young. She raised the white oak stake and shattered it into dust, scattering it into the air. Dalia forcibly made the 3 siblings inhale the dust, and they immediately crumbled. Klaus's veins glowed red as they heated up. Esther is helpless because her sister has hated her for 1,000 years. But Dalia still couldn't forgive her sister for abandoning her to marry the enemy who destroyed their home. She also accused Esther of breaking her promise, the one where each firstborn would be given to her, and now, none of it counted. She was going to kill all of Esther's children right in front of her. Esther looked at her tormented children, the original siblings, nearly burned alive. Her eldest daughter was on the brink of suffocating to death.
Dahlia, you have everything you ever wanted.
Esther placed the magic-suppressing shackles around her sister's neck. Freya instantly disrupted the ritual circle, forcing her 3 siblings to expel the white oak stake dust. Esther turned to signal her children. Elijah picked up the dagger and tossed it to Klaus. Klaus lunged forward, driving the dagger through both his mother and aunt. Dalia awoke in a bright, open field. Esther grasped her sister's hand and said that it wasn't until she saw her children fighting for each other that she realized her greatest mistake wasn't getting married and having children, but not being there for her sister. The 2 sisters embraced tightly. Dalia finally forgave her sister and found peace for her soul. As they looked at the petrified sisters, the story of the Michelson family was nearing its end. Marcel and Elijah cremated the dead. Freya restored Eva's body as a gift for her sister. To fulfill her promise to Cole, Rebecca decided to live once more as a witch. Haley, trapped in wolf form, pleaded with Elijah to return to Klaus because she couldn't accept Klaus being their daughter's sole guardian. Klaus and Camille also shared their feelings, though subtle and understated. Everything was clear between them as they exchanged glances. Just as they were about to kiss, Klaus suddenly bolted out of the bar, breathing heavily with anxiety.
That even when all seems burnt to ash, in our story, there is always another chapter to be told.
The Michelson family, now settled here, began to show signs of fracturing. Elijah, for the sake of Hope's well-being, had no choice but to live under the same roof as Klaus. Rebecca continued to wander the world, staying in touch with Freya through letters sent by magic. Marcel became absorbed in boxing and turning new vampires. Haley had only 1 day each month for visitation. Davina was filled with hatred for the Michelson family, refusing even to help make a daylight ring. Camille once again became Klaus's paid therapist. Klaus also embarked on the difficult path of winning Camille's heart. He invited Camille to preview his art exhibition, but she told him she didn't want any personal involvement with him outside of work. He then invited Camille to the exhibition's opening, but Camille pointed out that he was just worried no one would show up. Camille suggested Klaus take a good look at himself, but Klaus wasn't entirely alone. A former old friend of his had come to the city. The story traces back to southern France in the year 1002. At this time, the Michelson siblings had just become vampires, living a brutal existence to escape their father's relentless pursuit. They stayed far from civilization, surviving by robbing travelers on the road. Unable even to wear a decent piece of clothing, they murdered 5 nobles. Rebecca boldly suggested that they could impersonate these 5 people, using false identities to blend in. That's when Elijah noticed something was off. A young servant was hiding in the carriage. When discovered, the servant panicked. Realizing he had no way to escape, he quickly proposed that he could help the Michelson siblings integrate into this new society. Elijah rejected the offer, but Finn, tired of their harsh life, wished for at least one night of sleeping in a bed. The 5 of them were divided in their opinions, and unable to agree, they decided to take a vote. The servant's name was Lucien. Under his guidance, the 5 siblings walked into the grand, opulent castle for the first time, their eyes filled with wonder as they took in their surroundings. Introduced by Lucien, they met the lord of the castle. They even had to pander to the count's tastes, flattering him. Rebecca even used her charm, and the effect was immediate. They successfully earned the count's trust. Klaus, however, pointed out that Lucien didn't seem to be concerned about the damage the demons he brought with him would do to his master's family. Lucien said these nobles were wolves in sheep's clothing, with blood on their hands from the countless servants they had slaughtered. He didn't care about their fate. However, the count's daughter, Aurora, soon caught Klaus's eye. The stunningly beautiful Aurora was always seen with her brother, Tristan, by her side. The 5 siblings soon lived happily ever after in the count's household. Klaus even curled his hair and took up carving little horses. Lucien mentioned that he and Aurora had been childhood sweethearts and asked Klaus to deliver a love letter for him. He had no idea that Aurora and Klaus had already begun a secret affair. Just as they were in the midst of their intimacy, Lucien walked in on them, lost in his sorrow. Lucien didn't notice that he had drawn the attention of the guards. In a panic, Klaus breaks the window and escapes. Tristan only saw Lucien holding hands with his sister and assumed that Lucien was the culprit who seduced her. Tristan threw Lucien into the dungeon and tortured him. Klaus and Elijah tried to rescue Lucien, but Tristan uncovered their true identities. After Cole was caught feeding on a kitchen maid, Tristan concluded that they were fleeing from some even fiercer monster. Ignoring Klaus's threats, Tristan sliced open Lucien's mouth with a knife. Klaus managed to save Lucien, apologizing profusely for what had happened, but an enraged Lucien seized the opportunity to stab Klaus with a knife, only for Klaus to remind him that this couldn't kill him. However, Lucien, nearly driven mad by rage, struggled, and in the process, the knife tainted with Klaus's blood cut his palm. Both were astonished as they watched all of Lucien's wounds rapidly heal. It was the first time Klaus realized that his blood had such a power, believing himself to be blessed with divine strength. Lucien went berserk, charging out of the dungeon to kill Tristan, only to be mercilessly impaled by the guards. Klaus shared his shocking discovery with Elijah, analyzing how the blood could heal the living but had no effect on the dead. The 2 brothers prepared to cremate Lucien's body, but Lucien suddenly sat up. He had become the first vampire Klaus ever turned.